Okay, so as I said in the last video, we're going to start working on blending. So the first thing we need to know about blending is what these tools actually do. So the tools we're going to focus on today are the spot healing brush tool, the healing brush tool, the patch tool. The content aware move tool isn't really necessary for today, but you can always play with it if you'd like, as well as the clone stamp tool, which is what we've already been playing with this morning. So let's first start with what the difference is between these tools. The spot healing brush tool, for instance, is a tool where you can brush in an area and it's content aware. So if I brush this onto my frog, you can see that it is content aware and it will try and replace the information that I brushed over with information that makes sense. You can adjust a lot of settings for this. So content aware or create texture. So you can see it made this texture, or proximity match, similar to content aware, but it's trying to put the information in that would be in this proximity. As well as something you need to be understanding of is that we have sample all layers. When this is selected, it will be sampling the information from every layer you have in your document, whether it's showing or not. So if you don't want that to be, you need to make sure that you check this so it's not sampling all the layers, just the layer you're currently selected on. At which point, see how it's only taking the blue from the frog. It's not getting any information from any of the other information or any of the other layers. So that is the spot healing brush tool. The healing brush tool is very similar to the spot healing brush tool, except if I hold down my Alt Option key, it actually brings up this little viewfinder, and the viewfinder allows me to actually select where the information is coming from. So for our purposes, if I have this selected and I select some of the information in our fish's body, you can see that my brush has now picked up that area, and I can go back to my layer with my frog head, and I can actually start painting in, and you can see this little plus sign on the right side of my screen showing exactly where I'm picking information up from. So I can kind of monitor where this information is coming from and what it'll look like. And then whenever I let up on it, it has this kind of, well, this has a hard edge because I'm on a layer that doesn't have content right here. But as you can see up here, it was content aware, so it tried to blend the blues of my frog with the information from the fish. So that's rather helpful, and that's really a tool we'll be using a lot of in this project. Next, we have the patch tool. So if I make a selection, whether it's with the patch tool, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong layer for this. Whether it's with the patch tool or actually just with one of my selection tools, and then I click on the patch tool, it allows me to drag my little selection to another area, and whatever area I drag it to will be copied with the content aware where it blends with everything below it, the information into that area. But you can see, I hit Command D or Control D if you're a PC user to deselect, you can see that it only is within my selected area. So now you can also do this, like I said, with anything else, whether it's a selection you made with the marquee tool, polygonal lasso tool, or with magnetic lasso. This can be very handy for a lot of things, but if you make selections like this and then use the patch tool, it will use your selections just as it did with the selection made with the patch tool. So that's a pretty interesting tool to use. Now finally, let's talk about the clone stamp tool. All of our tools that were under the spot healing brush tool, all of these tools, the first four at least, are content aware. Well, the red eye tool is too, but we're not talking about that today. They're content aware though, to the fact that they utilize the information and they are trying to multiply or blend all of the information together every step of the way. Well, this clone stamp tool does not do any blending, and that's what you need to understand at first. I usually use the clone stamps tool as my first step. So if I want, say, some spots, some of these great spots down here on my fish, I go to my frog layer and hold down the Alt Option key and select an area, and then go down to the layer with my fish on it, and I can actually just start adding in some of these spots. Once I have those spots added in, you can see it has copied the information exactly. Yes, it's a little feathered around the edge, but that's because of the brush I'm using. So you do have the option of making it more opaque, less opaque. Again, you can sample all layers, current layer, or only current and below. But those things, you can see it's not actually doing any blending with anything below it. It's not pulling any information from below it to add it to our layer. So once I have this though, I've taken information from up here and put it down in the fish's body. At this point, I can actually come in with my spot healing brush or my healing brush tool and kind of start blending it a little bit more. So softening this edge, or I actually prefer the healing brush tool for this because I can select this blue of the fish and I can actually make my brush really small by hitting my brackets and start really filling in some of this blue area here to help it blend with the body of my fish. So you can see how this could be helpful. So, as I said a minute ago, the steps are to first take content from an area, glue it in place in another area, and then use our blending tools such as spot healing brush, etc. to blend the content you just glued in place with what's around it. So I hope that helps you get started a little bit. So now I'm going to actually, on myself, start blending the frog head with the fish body. I think a good rule of thumb for this really is that I want to make a copy of where I'm at this point. And I can even take all of these layers down here that are just kind of hanging out, and I can actually make a group from these layers and call it process, maybe, just so I know where they're at. And then I can make sure that these two layers, I can actually merge them so I don't have to keep switching back and forth between my layers. But because I kept the other layers live and unmerged, I'm able to go back and steal information from, say, if I messed up and I needed some information from the head or from the body, I can go steal that information and pull it back in. So this is a really good opportunity to start doing that. I'm going to first start pulling some of this blue texture, and I want to put it kind of in this area. So you can see what I'm doing with that. As we said before, if we started with a clone stamp, I can actually pull this information and just stamp it, say like into this black area. And I constantly am stamping, and when I run out of information, see how I've run out of where I can go really with this? Then I need to come back over here and make a selection again, and I'm constantly adding more and taking away more. So you can see that this information is pulling some of that frog texture down the body a bit, which is good. I also want this texture, I think, on my fins up here, which is good because it's kind of similar colors. This is a really good opportunity to make a selection, maybe with my magnetic lasso tool, and apply a texture into just the selection, which will help us out a lot so it's not overwhelming and needing to be cleaned up a whole lot here in a minute. So I'm just going to make a really rough selection and then smooth it out and feather it so it doesn't go out of our fish's area. Yeah, you can see how quick it is to actually refine this edge and feather it out. So likewise with that. Yeah, it's pretty close. And then I'm going to hit OK. And likewise, I also want to make sure I go to Object, Filter, no, sorry, Select. Saying all the words now. I want to go to my menu and hit Select, Modify, and then feather my edge by maybe 4 pixels. So now, when I take information with my clone stamp tool from, say, this area here, I can just kind of color it in and not pay a whole bunch of attention to whether I'm staying within the confines of the fish or not. I can just kind of monitor where on the frog it's coming from, and if it's staying, see, that wasn't in the right spot at all. If it's giving me information that makes sense for the part of the fish I'm editing. So there we go. I deselected by hitting Command D, and you can see that that's actually kind of an interesting texture it's added to the fish, and it feathered it out so it's not going to be a harsh edge, and it will be easier to blend now. So we only have a few more minutes of this tutorial, or of this demo video. So before we move on to the next step, I want to show you how I can actually start coming in here and blending with my healing brush tool to make sure that this is actually matching up a bit. So I've got my healing brush tool. My healing brush tool allows me to select my areas. My spot healing brush tool is using proximity match. I like content aware better, but it's actually one that allows me to, like, if I need to blend some of this, it comes in and it actually kind of does the math, multiplies the area for me to figure out, oh, this needs to actually look like this rather than how it looks. Sometimes it does mess up, but that just means I can come back and I can either fix it by clicking on it again, or I can come in with my healing brush tool and say, nah, I really actually want this information, and I can come in and just glue it in. So this is a back and forth, much like a lot of processes in Photoshop are, back and forth with all of the tools. And so I want to do, I think, the same texture in a couple other spots on the fish, and then I'm going to start pulling the oranges and the lines and the softness into the frog as well, so we don't have just one or the other. So real quick, let's look at where we are and where we came from, so you can see the edits we have made. That's pretty cool, right? That's pretty fun. Good start, good start. Okay, so let's move on to the next video so y'all can see now how to pull some of the information from the fish into